Hello everybody and welcome back to the FPL Phillips YouTube channel and to another FPL video ahead of Game Week 9, where this time I'm going to be covering some of my favourite picks to target and to actually buy ahead of Game Week 9. I've done all my research, all my statistics off camera. I'm just presenting to you my favourite options with a few alternatives here and there where it was too close to call for myself. But firstly, we're going to start with the defenders, work our way through the different positions. And if you are bringing in a defensive option this week, I think there's a very, very good option to go for, and that is a Wolves defender, whether you go with Ait-Nouri or you go with Semedo. And now the reason I wanted to include this in particular was due to the fact that I think most people will say, yeah, Ait-Nouri is the best Wolves defender pick, definitely go for him. And there's good justification for saying that. You can see the data so far this season on your screen right now. Per 90 minutes, the XG is better, the XA is better, a lot of things going in favour of Ait-Nouri. And if you watch Wolves, he does drive forward an awful lot. He's been getting into the box, scored that goal against Brentford, which looked really good. And this is stuff that we've seen historically from Ait-Nouri as well. He's done it time and time again over numerous seasons, and FPL Review also have him predicted to score a higher amount of points than Semedo over the next three, so 8.6 compared to 7.0, as you can see. One thing that I wanted to mention, however, is that over the last two game weeks, when we consider the games against both Brentford and then the game most recently just gone in game week 8 against Manchester City, the data has suddenly taken a little bit of a turn, and it now looks like this, where Semedo has actually come into his own a bit. So the XG does go in favour of the Portugueseman. The expected assists also go in favour there. And now Semedo did actually have, a few big chances. He created that assist in the game against City for the Larson goal. So it was a very, very good ball across, but equally a very, very high XG chance. There's going to be a lot of XA in there from that one chance that Larson did put away, albeit, but was one chance created in a sense. And he also had an opportunity where he burst through on the counter-attack, and Semedo looked very good there, had a chance in front of goal, which Ederson ended up smothering. So there was two very big chances in that game against Manchester City. However, when I went back and watched highlights from the Brentford game, analysed that, his position looked very, very strong there as well. Driving forward, driving to the byline, and the data suggests that's been happening more so than it was across the first few game weeks of the season. So I think, although Ait-Nouri looks like a fantastic pick still, and I'm not taking anything away from him as an option as Wolves enter this very nice run of fixtures, I think that Semedo is also one to consider. A huge differential at 0.1% ownership, especially over other well-engaged managers in the FPL community who might be opting to go for Ait-Nouri instead. But you could definitely go for one of these two. You could go for the differential in Semedo if you want to. Ait-Nouri is still the standout pick for me. Or maybe even, could you end up considering a double up? These two look very, very attacking at the moment. Not too many options from other teams in terms of really attacking fullbacks. I'm understanding that you're not going to get too many clean sheets. If you are going to get any clean sheets, there's some games coming up where I think Wolves will be likely to do it. They've got Crystal Palace at home and Southampton at home across the next three fixtures. So go for one of them, definitely. Whether you could go for two, if you're a brave manager, then I think that could definitely be done. And, alongside like a Gabriel or one other defender, I'm not even too sure that I'd back against that. And I think if I had a wild card, maybe even I'd consider it, having these two and going for a bit of a differential, spicy option where you're excited to watch two of your defender picks play week in, week out, because they do have some very, very nice fixtures coming up across these next, 8 game weeks. So it looks very good for these two. Let me know if you're going for one of these two defenders. I assume most managers will be bringing in an Ait-Nouri this week. He's probably going to be a popular transfer in for maybe even a Trent if you're looking to downgrade and use those funds into your midfield or your forward line. But yeah, let me know down below in the comments. Are you going for one of these two? If not, are you looking at any other defender picks that you actually would back more in the same kind of price range? But with that said and done, let's move in to having a look at some midfield picks. And I think midfield is an option where I don't think there's too many standout players at the moment or too many obvious options to move around. If you still own someone like a Smith Rowe, then yeah, I'd be looking to shift him on. But a lot of people have players like Rodgers, Semenyo in their teams who really aren't the ones who you're going to be looking at shifting on. And even with the premiums, I think the ones that you have, you're most likely to stick with at this point, whether you've gone for Son, whether you've gone for even Salah, whether you've got Palmer in your team. I think they're all getting such even amount of points, but on different game weeks, it's almost not worth trying to chase those and hopping around and using transfers on your premiums, etc, etc. But if you're looking to go for someone a bit more exciting in that kind of third, fourth or fifth midfield spot, then these two are players I would be looking at that I've felt really excited whilst watching over their last few games. Garnacho is finally getting starts, which as a Manchester United fan, I think a lot of us have been crying out for a long time, and he has looked fantastic. He's got such a high ceiling, this young player, and coming in, he's had a lot of good chances already, and you can see that reflected in his data. He's had some good expected FPL points per 90. His XG in particular is looking very, very good. He's always got an eye for goal, trying to find that extra yard of room and then get a shot away. And not all of them are brilliant finishes, not all of them are brilliant attempts. Some of them are just forcing out saves from the goalkeeper, to be honest, a lot of the time. But if you don't shoot, you don't score, and in FPL, it's very optimal to have in your team players that like to take shots. So although his expected assists might be lacking in comparison even to someone like Buonanotte at Leicester, I think that XG is the main thing you should be looking at with midfielders who, as we know, get 2 extra points in comparison to assists. So 5 points for a goal, 3 for an assist, instead of forwards who only get 4 for a goal, but still 3 for an assist. So if you can find a good goal-scoring midfielder, then they're an absolute goldmine in FPL. And someone like Garnacho is only 8% ownership right now. Over the next 3, he's predicted 11.3 points by FPL reviews. So it's looking very, very healthy indeed. Not too bad, considering Chelsea is one of those 3 fixtures. So Garnacho is one that I really like the look of. I just hope that Ten Hag continues to start him. If you're looking for a midfielder in that price range, I think 6.2 million could end up being an absolute bargain for him, especially with Manchester United maybe looking to find a bit of form actually in front of goal and start scoring some goals this season. Now, Buonanotte is playing for a team who, let's be honest, we're not expecting to score a huge amount of goals this season. Leicester have looked okay. Obviously, they looked all right against Southampton, but they're not playing Southampton every week. That's probably the easiest fixture they're going to have all season. But they do have some other decent games coming up next. They've got Ipswich and they've got Brentford, who have looked pretty poor defensively and have been shipping a lot of goals. They're both in their next 5. So if you're looking for that 5th midfield option who you could bring in for just those 2 game weeks, or maybe even start in a game against Nottingham Forest maybe, then Buonanotte does look very good. He's impressed me, certainly, across those last few fixtures. And yeah, the data looks very good as well. He's actually outscoring Garnacho, as you can see here, in a numerous amount of domains. So the expected assists, expected FPL points per 90 as well. And yeah, he's scoring more FPL points per 90 minutes too. FPL review really not backing him though, but a 1% ownership could be a very, very spicy differential indeed. Of course, yeah, those 2 very, very nice fixtures are both away games, but if you're looking, as I said, for one who's a bit of a high-risk pick, then Buonanotte, as like a Rodgers alternative maybe, or in addition to him, if you want to try and squeeze that extra premium into your midfield alongside both Rodgers and Buonanotte, you could maybe even have Foden, Palmer and Son or someone like that with Harland in your team if you arrange the funds right and take some of them out of your defence and other attackers. And yeah, he's a very, very good fun-saving option. It's hard to justify another midfield pick in this price bracket when Rodgers is looking so good and his minutes are looking so assured in an attack where, let's be honest, Villa are levels above Leicester. But I thought I'd present him as an option that maybe some of you guys haven't thought about yet, and maybe implore you to go back and watch the highlights for Leicester and take a look at him for yourself as a potential option for your teams. So what do we say about this man, hey? Erling Harland looks so good across those first 4 game weeks of the season, and since then he's absolutely stunk up the gaff, and I thought I'd present the data here from Fantasy Football Fix as always. So 23-24 last season, per 90 data is the first column. Then we've got game weeks 1 to 4, so before that Arsenal game, and then game weeks 5 to 8 afterwards. So when Rodri got injured, basically, this is when the data has been since then. And the stat that stands out to me mostly is that 3rd row down, he has not had a big chance for himself in 3 game weeks, which is something I didn't think anyone would be saying about Erling Haaland based on what we saw over those first 4 weeks of the season. But Manchester City just haven't looked at the races as much. He's not been getting as many chances. He's not looked quite as hungry as he has. And Man City, after this game week, do have some difficult fixtures coming up. So the first question is really, do you stick with Erling Haaland? Well, almost certainly, at least for 1 more game week. Do you captain him this game week? Also, probably, if you're going to keep him. And then afterwards, do we look elsewhere? And even this week, do you still maybe even consider him as a triple captain option if he hasn't looked at the races as he had earlier in the season? And people were saying ahead of Ipswich that, yeah, Harland didn't look brilliant in game week 1. I think now we do have more data, and he is still a triple captain option, but it's not really the best feeling in the world, is it, to put your triple captain armband and activate that chip that you only get one of per season on a player who has not been putting the ball in the back of the net for 3 weeks. And 3.19 expected FPL points per 90 is much, much poorer than most forwards in the game, not just forwards at the expensive price points as well, and one that you're spending 15.4 million of your £100 million budget on, especially. Now, the shots on target are not there as well. Yep, as mentioned, the big chances, non-penalty expected goals, it all looks diabolical. And this is the same story as the data from last season when Rodri wasn't in the side. The data did have a drop-off, not as drastic as this, and obviously it was spread out. There was still only around 340 minutes played last season where Rodri wasn't on the pitch that Erling Haaland had, so it's not, by any stretch of the imagination, the biggest sample size. We've not seen an injury this severe for Rodri in all of his time at City so far. But KDB coming back and regaining fitness would hopefully be something that could give FPL managers some hope. If he can make the Southampton game in particular, I think Foden needs to get starts as well. I think when him and Grealish are on, it is better for Erling Haaland too. Doku looked absolutely woeful in that game. I would be absolutely furious if I was a Manchester City fan, much like the Garnacho situation with United. The player starting instead does not need to be starting. Foden could have been on. When he did come on, he grabbed the assist from the corner for John Stones. And yeah, I would be shocked if Foden didn't start this next game. Although, let's be said, I wouldn't be shocked because it's Pep. But by all stretches of logic, Foden should be starting this game for Southampton. So there's optimism there for people who brought Foden in last game week 2. Yeah, Erling Haaland, I think you've just got to hold on to him for one more week. I would definitely captain him this week. Triple captaincy, I would maybe be put off by. I think that might be more of a mental thing myself than actually, looking at the data. He could obviously go back and grab a hat-trick in this game against Southampton, but the stars just aren't aligning for me with the injuries and things like this. So I would probably wait, hold on, and do it in a game week where I felt more excited about doing it, to be honest. Like I did in game week 2 when I did triple captain Erling Haaland against Ipswich, and he scored a hat-trick. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on Erling Haaland. Obviously keep him for now. If 1 or 2 game weeks pass and Man City is still performing woefully and it's looking like you can get much better value out of bringing in some other premiums in your midfield, maybe Palmer hits another spell of some form, Salah's looking back to his best, then that's another discussion for another time. But Erling Haaland at the moment is one to just monitor and just be wary of because the data is looking absolute poo. And then finally, I wanted to touch on some budget forwards, and this was something I was going to include in a video last week. However, I just didn't end up making that video in the end, but I wanted to compare these 4 players: Cunha, Wood, Raul, and then his 4th slot was open for debate, but I've actually slid in Visser, who looks like he'll be back fit, ready and available for game week 9, so it's definitely an option that you could go for that pretty much no one's going to own right now due to the fact he's coming back from injury. Brentford look a lot better with Visser. His data from earlier in the season look very nice as well. Hopefully he can find some form. It's a very, very good entry point for him where no one else is going to own him, as I've said. You've just got that factor that, of course, they could rush him back too soon. He could pick up another injury. Sometimes players come back from injury and they don't pick up the same form that they had prior to it. But I have little doubt of that with Visser, to be honest. And I think 5.9 million is a very, very good price point for him. Now, any owners of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, this section is definitely for you. He's looked absolutely awful at the moment. The fact is, he's had huge chances, however. So if you look at just XG and stuff like that, Calvert-Lewin's in this list, and he's looking like the best option. If somehow, he gets a goal next game week and he finds his shooting boots and he can finally get a bit of confidence going and start scoring some goals with Everton's next fixtures, then yeah, maybe I'll change my opinion on him. But for now, he's just like one of those FPL trolls where you bring him in over all the other plethora of cheap budget forward options and he ends up stinking the gaff up. So he's not included in this, and that's why, for anyone wondering. Now, Cunha, Wood and Raul Jimenez all look like much better options in my opinion. Their minutes are looking pretty good. Chris Wood has continued to impress. One thing I would say as a caveat with Nottingham Forest is that if you can see the fixture difficulty rankings, which are the 5th row down in this table that you can see, Nottingham Forest have some nice fixtures coming up, but in Game Week 12, they're one of the teams that have a pretty nasty fixture swing, and they do enter a very rough patch of form. So if you still got your wild card left to use then, that's not an issue because that will be the most popular week for the wildcard. I'd recommend wildcarding then if you've still got the chip left. However, managers who don't have a wildcard left do be wary because there's only, 3 game weeks left, and so you'd maybe need to consider moving Chris Wood out. And if you've got other fires in your team that you'll need to put out at some point and use transfers on, maybe looking more long-term at an option like Acuna or even a Visser, who have much better fixtures. So Wolves look first for attacking fixture difficulty over the next 10, whilst Brentford are in second. That could be the way to go in my view. Now, Cunha's look very good. He's taking chances. You've got Larson as well in that Wolves side, who also looks a good pick. I could have easily done a comparison between those two for this game week, but comparing 4 Wolves players just did seem like a lot of Wolves talk. But though he looks like a very, very good pick as well, and definitely one I'd be considering and looking at. Both of them playing in that Wolves side has been a massive boost attacking-wise. They've scored a lot of goals, and they've looked very, very dangerous going forward with those two, plus the wing-backs in such attacking positions. But yeah, the data is not looking quite as strong for Cunha as it is for someone like a Jimenez, who could now be on penalties after Andreas Pereira's disastrous spot kick, let's say, and put it frankly, in game week 8. So Jimenez, there was debate around him actually being the penalty taker at the start of the season. With that one being said and done, I think Andreas might have just put the nail in his own coffin with that penalty. And hopefully, for Raul Jimenez owners, the Mexican will now be the next one to step up and take a spot kick when that time comes for Fulham. So yeah, the expected goals with even non-penalty looked very, very good for Jimenez, 0.64 compared to Cunha's. It is actually rather good. They just don't have quite as strong a fixture set coming up over the next 10 game weeks. And the last thing to look at is the predicted points. So over the next 3, considering these fixtures, of course, Wood does have the strongest predicted points there, 12.3. As mentioned, though, with that caveat, remember, Nottingham Forest fixtures after those next 3 do drop off. And so, as a long-term option, I would sway away from Wood and probably, truthfully, go for Raul Jimenez. It's worth noting, he is almost an entire million cheaper than going for Cunha, and that million could be valuable could even get you a Pedro Porro in your defence. It could get you a midfield option that you prefer instead of having to force you to go for Buonanotte if you thought he looked like absolute garbage when I presented him as an option. Then it could get you, a Garnacho over him. And when the predicted points are very, very close over the next 3 game weeks, and yeah, admittedly, Fulham's fixtures aren't quite as enticing as Wolves's, I think Raul Jimenez is going to be the main source of goals in that Fulham side, whereas Wolves do have quite a number of options. And we know Cunha is on penalties. That's another thing that goes in his favour. And overall, it's just very neck and neck between those two. And the predicted points suggest that as well. 11.9 for Cunha, 11.4 for Raul Jimenez. Let me know which one you guys prefer down below in the comments. If it was me bringing in an option this week, I think I'm going for Raul Jimenez. But I'm interested to know what you guys think. That's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I appreciate it was quite a fast-paced one. I didn't want to have too many discussions, too many comparisons. So let me know what you thought of the kind of size of the video. Do you want to see more per position? Are you okay with this kind of limited number? Or do you want to see big tables and big spreadsheets? Let me know about that down below in the comments if you fancy leaving me some feedback. If you did enjoy the video, then of course a like would much be appreciated. And if you're new around here, then do consider subscribing if you'd like to see some more FPL content from me in the future. But other than that, I'll leave you to have, hopefully, a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.